Welcome, everybody, to the very first episode of the Cultivate E.D.H podcast. I'm Cam.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, on our very first episode, we're going to be tackling the issues posed by the Command Zone's Commander 2019 Summit, as they were the ones who kind of like put out the questions to the EDH community and all the other podcasts that we unfortunately didn't get to participate in because this is obviously our first episode. So we're going to start things off with our own series that we're going to call On the Stack, where we're going to respond to some of the issues not just posed in the Commander 2019 Summit that Josh Lee Kwai and Jimmy Wong did, but just any general issues or anything going on in the Magic community and things like that. So I figured we'd start things off with the banned and restricted announcement that was just done yesterday on July 8th, 2019, where Paradox Engine and Iona Shield of Amaria were banned in Commander, and Painter's Servant was unbanned. Aaron, let me get your thoughts on this before I delve into my very upsetness.
Yeah, it's I'm sort of okay with it. I think if you were going to unban Painter's Servant, you had to unban Iona Shield of Amaria because it's just too easy of just to shut everybody down. And for those of you who don't know, Iona Shield of Amaria, she's a 6 and triple white legendary angel. She's flying, and as she enters the battlefield, you choose a color. Your opponents cannot cast spells of the chosen color. And Painter's Servant turns all spells to a color of your choice. So you can kind of see there where you choose a color. For Painter's Servant, everything's that color. Iona comes in, you choose the same color, your opponents can't cast any spells. And that's kind of a really, really game-winning combo there. But I think I was a little upset because I wanted to play Iona. I have a Kali of the Vast deck, and I was thinking about picking her up and putting her in there just kind of for a little bit of fun. Maybe kind of keep those counter spells in check as I'm playing Kali and things like that. But Paradox Engine, honestly, I never saw it as a huge problem. I know that there's a lot of things that you can do with that card that is a little, backbreaking for your opponents, but
it's a very good card. I mean,
it's
in all practicality, I will subscribe to the fact that yes, it probably is ban worthy. Not even probably. Yes, it is ban-worthy. Yes, Paradox Engine was ban-worthy. But I don't think it's nearly as ban-worthy as some of the other things that exist in the Commander format.
Yeah, and I can see where you're coming from, but I think with, some of the stuff that can do, especially with the release of Urza and kind of a resurgence in the artifact arena. I think that something in artifacts was going to be banned, and they just decided that it was going to be that.
Well, let's go back to Iona for a second. Iona, it seems like a random type ban. It just seems like it was really banned out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Because Painter's Servant does almost the exact same. It doesn't do almost the exact same thing Iona does, because Iona actually prevents you from casting spells of those color, whereas Painter's Servant just makes things of that color. However, Painter's Servant enables combos for you to abuse that clause of it making things other colors. So, yes, I understand that the two of them can't coexist in the format because it would just be too powerful. But it also just seems why? Why did Iona have to get banned? From what I've heard so far from the people, not only the people in our playgroup, but from what I've seen on Twitter and on Facebook and all these different people responding to the ban, it seemed like Iona was a relatively I want to say harmless thing, that it was just it's this mean thing you can do, but you can also blow up everybody's lands. Armageddon and other land destruction spells aren't banned.
Yeah, and that's kind of what me thinking about it is, if they didn't unban Painter's Servant and ban Iona, I don't think anybody would have batted an eye. I think this kind of change, they just kind of wanted to shake up the format a little bit and see what happens. But I don't know that it was super necessary, but I'm kind of interested to see what comes out of the Painter Servant unban and see what kind of stuff people are going to do with that.
I mean, like the painter servant, like the quintessential painter servant combo is painter servant grindstone, where you just basically mill their entire library for a certain color. If they're playing, I don't know, like I'm not really sure how it works, other than like if it's a monocolor deck, then you can just name that color for painter servant, and then do the thing with millstone where you mill out their entire library because their library is all one color.
Well, it's so Grindstone reads um, 3 in tap. Target player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library, and if both cards share a color, repeat the process. So they would everybody's library shares a color, or every all their cards now share a color because of Painter Servant. So then you just tap 3, tap Grindstone, boom, they're milled out. And so it is, that's kind of backbreaking, and it's a really easy win because it's both of them are colorless, and Grindstone's a 1 drop, and you can pay 3, and Painter Servant's a 2 drop, I believe.
Yeah, painter servant's like 2 colorless mana for like a 1/3, something like that.
Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like you could really easily win by turn like 1
These things
or
don't feel
turn 2.
different to me though. Like these things, okay, yes, Iona at 1 card does the shutting down, whereas the painter servant grindstone combo is 2 cards. So yes, it's more difficult to do, but it's essentially doing the same thing.
Well, I mean, the Painter Servant Iona is 2 cards, and this is 2 cards. But the difference between Grindstone and Iona is 9 mana, 3 white and 6 colorless. Grindstone is 1 mana and 3 to tap it, and I feel like that's a little bit better. So I don't really understand the Painter Servant, like unbanning. Maybe there's something that I'm not seeing. Maybe they're gonna
I'm
ban
not seeing
Grindstone.
the reason for like why are we trading painter servant for Iona? I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, like Iona's 9 mana or like 8 mana. No, 9 mana. Six. It's
yeah, it
six and
is.
triple white, right? Yeah. So
Yes,
it's a 9 mana card. Like the only way you're getting that onto the battlefield is if you're cheating it out. Very
yeah,
rarely do I see like not like I've never seen Iona cast, but very rarely would I see someone pay a retail 9 mana for Iona just to play her on your main phase. You're almost
yeah.
always playing reanimate, losing 9 life, and getting her onto the battlefield, or you're cheating her out with Kalia, or whatever it is. However, you're getting her onto the battlefield.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna cheat her out because hard casting something for 9 mana is not the easiest thing to do. Granted, in our format, it's not like extremely difficult when we have commanders that are 10 mana, but still, I think that's something that doesn't happen as often.
Yeah. So now let's focus on the one that I'm really upset about is Paradox Engine.
I will let you start with this because you are the most upset about this, and you have quite a bit to say here. Because
Okay. I I firmly fall into the camp of we should not be banning cards in Commander unless they are creating such a problem that they like I don't know like I would say that like if it's like game breaking, and I mean that like it's better than like if it's already better than tier 1, then yeah, it's probably ban worthy. So if you have a deck that's like tier 1 and then a new card gets printed into it and it goes above tier 1. So now it's like the best deck in the format. Like undisputedly, it's the best deck in the format. Then yes, that deck probably needs something banned out of it. And I did read Sheldon Menery's one of his reasons for banning Paradox Engine was that you could put it in almost every deck and it would work. And that's where I draw the biggest grievance with this banning is because there are other cards that are much more guilty of this sin than Paradox Engine is. Soul Ring is probably the biggest one, and then second is probably Cyclonic Rift, because every deck is playing Soul Ring, Now, granted, it's probably not game breaking, and playing Soul Ring isn't letting you win out of nowhere, which is another phrase that I think he used, that Paradox Engine lets you win out of nowhere. Which, granted, yes, it does, but Paradox Engine is not the only card in this format that lets you just win out of nowhere. And to that, I would point to like Doomsday combos, like Zur the Enchanter or Kess Dissident Mage, that use the Doomsday combo, where they just play Doomsday and then play Lab Man, and then draw the rest of the cards in their deck and win. I mean, Doomsday is a win out of nowhere card, and it's not banned.
Yeah, and I do see kind of where you're coming from there. And the only counterpoint that I could think of off the top of my head is that it is a Paradox Engine is colorless and Doomsday is black, but most decks that run black don't necessarily run Doomsday, but a lot of them will.
Well, I mean, like, there's a lot of combo centric ones. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at it, Zur the Enchanter has like an archetype called Zur Doomsday or something like that. And that's what it does. Is it tutors out like these enchantments, and it fumbles around until it can play Doomsday, and then it wins. And the same thing with Kess. Like, yes, they're both black centric combo decks, but one of the best colors in the entire format is black because of its tutor ability, its card draw ability, and its graveyard recursion ability. And that's like three of the main things that like we look for in good commander decks. It can't deal with artifacts or enchantments all that well, but sometimes combo decks don't really need to because they're winning out of nowhere, like the rules committee is claiming with this Paradox Engine ban. I just don't think Paradox Engine is as guilty. I shouldn't say as guilty, more guilty than any of the other cards that we've listed.
I mean, except for maybe Soul Ring, I think that's a little out there, Cause
yes, but like in the sense that they gave the reason that Paradox Engine was good in almost every deck. Well, Soul Ring's played in almost every deck, and it's good. It's not game breaking good, but it's still good. I mean, I still think the argument is there to like ban Soul Ring because it's played in every deck. And then, like we mentioned, Cyclonic Rift. Cyclonic Rift is like the number one most played blue card on EDH rack. EDH rack, yeah. And
yeah,
it's
and I
so
definitely see it
expensive
played all the time.
And I see it all the time. It's next to Soul Ring, Cyclonic Rift is becoming the number one like most played card in EDH.
Yeah, I mean, because that card is just so good. Like, it's one of those instances where you just kind of out of nowhere can host a lot of different people. If you've got your token player, the tokens swing out, boom, Cyclonic Rift, and all the tokens are gone, and it's they can't go back to your hand. They're dead and they're gone forever.
Well, and like tokens is just one example. I mean, Cyclonic Rift, like it's one of those cards that is so versatile, and it might not win the game out of nowhere, but it's definitely one of those like board resets that is like it prevents you from getting to game 2. So like, yeah, the token deck might swing out with a billion tokens or make a billion tokens and give them haste and then try to kill everybody and then use Cyclonic Rift. Like, cool. You just added another hour to the game because that was my last push. Or they're doing like some sort of like tap untap creature shenanigans or something like that with Fate, or yeah, it's like Fate Stitcher and like Kyor's followers, something like that. And you Cyclonic Rift to stop them. Like I don't think that Paradox Engine was as guilty as some of these other cards.
Yeah, I do see where you're coming from, and the rules committee, they do the best that they can with the information that they have from the community. They take in all the information that they can get from Twitter, Facebook, all the formats from there. I don't know how long we've had the people who they're not on the rules committee, but they help out.
Oh, you mean the Commander Advisory Committee?
Yeah, the advisory board.
It's
I
been
don't
like
know.
6 months or something like that.
Yeah, so we've had them for a little bit, and so they're just kind of doing their best with what they
The only
can.
thing with the Commander Advisory Committee, though, is that the Commander Rules Committee, the people that are actually making the decisions, don't have to like take what they say seriously.
They don't have to, but I think it comes from some very respected luminaries in the commander, format. So I think they definitely do take some of their advice and information
Well, then,
because
like, I pose the question to you then: should Wizards overtake the Rules Committee and be in charge of the banned and restricted?
I don't think so.
I like this banning's kind of got like I only own one copy of Paradox Engine, and I mean like yeah, it sucks to lose $45, but this banning like has kind of like just kind of like shaken my viewpoints on things because Commander is the most played format, if not the second most played format next to Standard. It's
Yeah,
one of the
that's
most popular
undisputed.
things. And Wizards just put together a team not too long ago that like started in Dominaria back in like 2018 or last year. This time last year, I think, or 2 years ago, something like that. Anyway, they put it together a team to test Standard to make sure that Standard wouldn't be broken. If Commander is getting as big as Standard and it's becoming this big thing, if Wizards of the Coast gains control like over the rules committee and like absorbs them into the company and like the rules committee themselves no longer has a say on what gets banned, is there a chance that we could see uh instead of just the product designers who design the precons that come out every year, is there a chance that we start to see a team dedicated to Commander to making sure that all the cards that are going through Standard, all the cards that are being released in ancillary products like Modern Horizons, are not going to break the Commander format to the point where a banning is required, and then we have a bunch of feel bads because people lose out on their decks?
I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel like they could, and it would probably be fine and be good. But I also think that Commander right now, like, maybe other than this banning, is in a really, really good spot. I mean, most of the gameplay that I've been a part of and just stuff that I've seen seems really fair and like people are having a lot of fun. We've gotten some new commanders that people are pretty excited about, and we've just been in a really good spot for a really long time. I mean, I know that last year when Commander 2018 came out, it wasn't the most popular precons we've ever seen, but people were still having fun. I've seen a lot of people take on the Lord Windgrace deck and kind of do some fun things with that. And we're gonna have another Commander precon coming out in the next few months here, and it'll probably be I have a lot of faith in those guys who make the precon stuff. They've made some really good stuff and a lot of really fun stuff that I've enjoyed a lot of, and a lot of people in my play group and my friends have really enjoyed. So I feel like they know what they're doing. That's the thing is I think we have to trust them a little bit. I know that maybe this paradox engine ban is shaking you a little bit, but I think you should put a little bit more trust in them because I think maybe with the release of this new commander thing, maybe there's some cards in there that if Paradox Engine was still here, it would be backbreaking. Who knows? Who knows what's to come? They do. That's the thing.
Well, I get that's a fair point, and to like step down off my soapbox to just say like I guess I trust them in what they're doing. I don't necessarily always agree with what they do, but I do kind of have to trust them because for the most part they're usually right. Which I think that like you just said it like would lead to like the next thing that we want to talk about. So like the next thing on the stack would be the state of the format. And I kind of agree with what you just said that like I think it's in a really healthy spot. And I don't even necessarily think that Paradox Engine and Iona were making it an unhealthy an unhealthy format. I thought even with those cards, it still seemed like a pretty healthy format.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the first time we've received any change in the ban list in a long time. I mean,
Like
the
a
last
year.
time, yeah, in at least a year, but the last time it wasn't even a ban; it was just an unban of Protean Hulk, which was I was pretty excited about that. I don't know about you,
I mean, like
but
like take it or leave it. I mean, I play
I think
Protean
Protean,
Hulk in like a couple decks, but I don't have like any of the like I don't Flash Hulk or anything like that. I play like fair Protean Hulk, I guess, where I hard cast him or like I get him out of the graveyard somehow after like self milling myself and I do some shenanigan with him. It never ends up in like an infinite combo or anything that wins the game.
yeah, but and that was the last time that we'd seen anything, you know, unban or ban, and I can't. I don't remember the last time we got a ban. Do you?
The last time something was like just outright banned in the format.
Yeah,
No, I don't really remember.
yeah, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's been a hot minute, and maybe the rules committee is just kind of thinking, let's change things up. Maybe they saw some stuff that we didn't. I mean, because the way that I look at it is the information that we have is just like tiny fraction of the commander, you know, the commander that is played at large.
Yeah,
Like
but then
we
again, like the rules committee isn't getting like massive amounts of information. There's no body to
maybe
collect all this data.
maybe not massive, but I would reason to say maybe more than we are.
Well, probably more than we are. I mean,
So they might have seen a problem where we didn't, and so maybe they're just like, let's change things up a little bit, ban a Paradox Engine here, an
well,
Iona there, and
that's the thing though, is
see
if they
what see
really
what
wanted to
happens.
shake up the format, there are cards on the ban list that really don't belong there. I mean, like at least I would argue, like Coalition Victory and like Biorhythm and things like that. Like those two cards do not scream to me this is ban worthy. Especially Biorhythm, because Biorhythm does like the same thing that Shaman of the Forbidden Ways, or is that one mythic rare from like Dragons of Tarkir that taps for 2 mana of any color? It's like, and it has like its like abilities like Formidable, 9 green, and it does the same thing as
Oh,
Biorhythm, where uh,
Shaman of the Forgotten
yeah,
Ways.
Shaman of the Forgotten Ways, where your life total becomes equal to the number of creatures you control.
Yeah, I
Biorhythm does
mean,
like the same thing, like, but for some reason this like 3 mana 2/3 that taps for 2 mana and then a mana dork is legal in the format and does
I
the
mean,
same thing.
look at it this way. You look at Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. First he's a 3 drop. Then you have to get to the Formidable, which isn't difficult in Commander by any means. But then you have to pay 11 mana, so he's gonna have to survive for a while. Whereas Biorhythm is just a sorcery, and the
But
only
it's
thing
still
that you
8 mana. It's still like
yeah.
the same issue like with like Iona. Iona's a 9 mana card and it was banned. And Biorhythm,
Yeah,
just because it's an 8 mana sorcery doesn't mean,
I
like
mean,
and I
there's
like I'd even argue for Grizzlebrand and like Gifts Ungiven to be unbanned. I mean Grizzlebrand I don't really like I feel like maybe at the time that he was banned or put on the ban list that there probably wasn't enough good removal to like deal with him. But I definitely think now that a card like Grizzlebrand, there is no reason why a card like that should not exist in the format when we have cards like Bolus's Citadel that do almost the same thing.
yeah. I mean, and Grizzlebrand is another one of the cards where it's an eight mana 7/7 with flying and lifelink, but
And
that's
it's still the same thing with Iona, like going back to Iona and this whole Iona banning. Like, yeah, how many times are you hard casting Grizzlebrand? Very rarely are you hard casting Grizzlebrand. You're getting him into your graveyard somehow, and you're playing Reanimate, or you're playing Animate Dead, or you're playing some way to get him out of the bin, and then getting them onto the battlefield, and then you get to draw cards.
I mean, drawing 7 cards is really good though. Look at it from their perspective. You've got a card that I know that they were finding a lot of ways to cheat him out, and you pay 7 life, which in the grand scheme of Commander isn't that much, and then you draw 7 life. And he can gain you the 7 back just by attacking.
No, but then what about Necropotence? Necropotence, like, you pay life to draw cards. I mean, you don't get them until your end step, but you're still paying life to draw cards. Like, my point is that, like, look at, like, I mean, compare those two. Compare Necropotence and Grizzlebrand. Grizzlebrand is a creature. You can't Wrath of God a Necropotence.
True.
I think that the Commander has gotten to the point where there's enough removal and there's enough answers in the format. Cyclonic Rift. If you really want to be that kind of person and play Cyclonic Rift like that, if someone reanimates their Grizzlebrand, okay, cool, I'm going to Cyclonic Rift now. You know, I think there's enough answers since Grizzlebrand was put on the ban list, and the same goes for some of these other cards, like Biorhythm. There's enough answers for it at this point that those things can come off the ban list and be relatively fine.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the things with Necropotence, it's kind of the two caveats. One, you have to skip your draw step, which isn't, that huge when you're paying a bunch of life to draw cards, but there's also whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. So you can't overfill your hand if you don't have, something to deal with it, like a Reliquary Tower or something of that nature.
I mean, think about it like that in Delve. I mean, like, the Delve mechanic, if I dig through time to look at the top 7 and get 2 of them, unless I'm paying 8 mana for that dig through time, I'm going to delve away 6 cards and I'm going to lose them because they're going to exile.
Exactly. And that's why Necropotence is just, it's a little more balanced because...
But it's also an enchantment. So it's a little bit harder to deal with than something like Grizzlebrand, which is a creature, which is arguably the easiest thing to deal with in Commander, is a creature.
Yeah, and I do agree with you there, but I think that, since it does have, a little more of like a caveat to it, to where you have to, there's clauses to kind of keep it from being as broken as Grizzlebrand. The one thing with Grizzlebrand though is you have to hit 7. You can't hit 5. You can't hit 4. You have to do 7.
What do you mean? Like, you have to pay 7 life to draw 7 cards?
Yeah, it's no more, no less.
It's like no more, no less. But at the same time, if you don't have that Reliquary Tower on the battlefield, you still have to discard cards.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, sure, they don't go to exile, but if I draw 7 cards with Grizzlebrand and I already have 4 cards in my hand, and then I discard a bunch of creatures, but I already used my Reanimate to get back Grizzlebrand, then, like, okay, that's a resource that I've now wasted. Not that you can't get it back, but it's like that, like, reanimating a Grizzlebrand to pay 7 life and draw 7 cards does not seem that absurd to me compared to, like, playing an unfair Flash Hulk deck where you just play Flash, put Protean Hulk on the battlefield, and, like, win the game using Mikaeus the Unhallowed, Viscera, Seer, whatever, like, infinite combo. I know one of them exists like that, that involves Mikaeus, Viscera, Seer, like Genesis and something like that. I don't know. It doesn't seem that broken to me. Like, when you can do, like, there's plenty of other broken things you can do.
Yeah, and I do see where you're coming from, but like I said earlier, I think we need to kind of just trust the...
Well, I mean, just, like, think about it in relation to, like, this. I mean, like, the state of the format and the ban list go hand in hand. There are things on the ban list that would not affect the state of the format if they were to come off. Clearly, they thought Painter Servant was, fine to come off the ban list and join the ranks of the EDH community in our decks, but at the cost of Iona. Because clearly those two can't exist together. I mean, that makes sense. But, not Paradox Engine, but Painter Servant is just like one of those cards that was on the ban list that is one of those that I would argue could easily come off.
Yeah. But kind of going more back into what the format looks like, not really including like the ban list. I think we're in a healthy spot where there maybe there are a few cards that could get unbanned and it would be fine. But I think honestly, we're in a good spot. There's a lot of fun and interesting play out there. Games are lasting, like an hour or so, kind of depending on what people are playing. But it's people aren't playing 4 or 5 hour games with just with 4 people. Sometimes if you have a bigger group, 6 or something like that, it might take longer. But for the most part, like regular, just 4 player commander is is I think in a really good spot.
It's probably the best it's ever been. I would
Yeah,
argue it's probably the best that it's ever been.
and it kind of makes me excited to see what we're gonna get with Commander 2019 and
God, I
what
hope it's
that's
four
gonna
color
be.
commanders. God, I hope it's four color commanders.
I know you do, and I am excited to see kind of what we get. 4 color would be really nice.
Just please don't do planeswalkers again. Please, like
Yeah,
5 year minimum. Please put that off for 5 years. Don't ever do that for 5 years.
I I wasn't that big of a fan of the planeswalkers either, and I would love to see some kind of interesting legendary creatures coming out and
Well,
changing the format a
speaking
little bit.
of like planeswalkers as commanders, we can move to our next thing on the stack. Um, Planeswalkers as commanders. Planeswalkers that don't explicitly have the text at the bottom of the card that says this planeswalker can be your commander. Do we think that planeswalkers should be allowed as commanders?
In simple terms, no, we shouldn't let it happen. I just think that, and in a little bit longer of terms, I think that you know it's an interesting concept, but literally like the reason that Oathbreaker was created, so that people could kind of do that and have their favorite commander be the face of their, or have their favorite planeswalker be the face of their deck. And I Oathbreaker's fun. I kind of like the idea. I
I feel like it's another tiny leaders. Like I don't think it has any staying power.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's something fun that you can do, and but I don't think for commander that we should let planeswalkers be your commander that don't have the text. This planeswalker can be your commander, because there are just so many planeswalkers out there that would just be such a pain to kind of see played, because
Well,
they just.
like, and then to like kind of like loop things back around to the ban list. I mean, if we allow some planeswalkers to become your, I mean, not some, if we allow all planeswalkers to become your commander, regardless of the text or not, there's going to have to be cards that go on that ban list,
Oh, for sure. There's plenty of planeswalkers
and
that
not
would
just
just get banned.
planeswalkers, but like cards
Well,
that
yeah,
interact with planeswalkers, namely doubling season.
yeah. Doubling season would be a big one. Um,
Which is also
I
why, like, I've come around on this topic to, I was kind of like for it, like yeah, like let them have it. I don't really care because I don't really have an interest in doing it. I mean, if I'm gonna build a Planeswalker commander deck, I'm more than likely gonna do it with one of the ones that it was designed to be that way, like the Commander 2018 Planeswalkers or the Commander 2014 Planeswalkers, because they were designed that way.
yeah,
I've
and
come around on like the whole like probably shouldn't do it because I don't want any more cards put on the ban list. I don't think doubling season is any less powerful or any more powerful than Paradox Engine in the right deck. In the right deck, you're gonna abuse doubling season just as much as you would Paradox Engine in the right deck. And I don't believe that we should put doubling season on the ban list just because it's a good card and you can like do absurd things with it with planeswalkers.
well, the other thing that I was thinking about was that kind of needs to be thought about is planeswalkers now have static abilities. It's a thing that was just kind of introduced in War of the Spark. I really like it, but with that in mind, if you make your planeswalker a commander, obviously it's going to be easier to remove than an enchantment because you can't directly attack an enchantment, but it's just like having an enchantment as a commander, sort of, because I could imagine having a doubling season commander. Obviously, none of the static abilities on any of the planeswalkers are anywhere near that good, but just like it's something like that. They could end up having a planeswalker that has just a really really good static ability, and it would just kind of change the format almost. Like,
Well,
think about the
it would like if that were the case. So say they print a new planeswalker with some static ability that's like really good, and they changed the rules say 3 months ago when War of the Spark came out to say, hey, planeswalkers can be your commander now. We're officially changing the rule. All planeswalkers can be your commander now. And then then Wizards goes and in the fall set, whatever it's going to be, prints a planeswalker that's for some reason stupid busted with this new rule. Well, now it's going to force the bans. Now doubling season is probably going to be forced to be banned, or this new planeswalker, as soon as it comes out, you might not even be able to play it in Commander because it's just going to get instantly banned because of some interaction with some, I would probably compare it to like the hype for Urza, Lord High Artificer with Modern Horizons, that people were saying like, oh, this card's just busted. We might as well just ban it now. Like, already calling for the head, like Urza's head, quite literally.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, and there are some planeswalkers that already have some pretty good static abilities, like the new Raul Zarek, Raul Storm Conduit. He has a really, it's not the best, but it's still a very good static ability of, whenever you cast or copy a spell, deal 1 damage to I believe it's target opponent.
It might be any target or something.
Creature.
It might be like any target because any target is just they've just errated it to be any target, meaning creature or player. I think creature, player, or planeswalker. And you're right.
To any target opponent or planeswalker.
Yeah, so like if Raul Zarek's in your command zone and then you play him onto the battlefield and then you do the thing where you can copy a copy spell and you just infinitely get the copies going and you just machine gun everybody down. Are we now going to have to ban Raul Zarek or ban a copy spell out of the format of all things?
Yeah, I mean, because all you'd have to do, because you could easily win on turn 2 or 3 with that, because you play Raul Zarek. If you have your Soul Ring or Signet
your
or what have
Moxes
you,
or whatever.
Yeah, to kind of get him out early. And then, because his copy is his -2, and he comes in as a 4. So, I play one of my 2-drop copy spells with his -2, and then boom, game's over. Like,
I will say this: I am for Planeswalker commanders in a casual setting. Like, if anyone in my play group, like including you or anyone else that I play with, wants to build I don't know, like a Garruk Wildspeaker deck, and they just want to make a bunch of beasts, and they want to do whatever. That's fine. Like, I don't care. Like, you do you. That sounds fun. But as soon as you start getting into degenerate combo territory where you're playing Raul Zarek on turn 2 and then comboing out on turn 3 or 4, then I have an issue with it. If you're going to do degenerate stuff with it, like doubling season, or play Planeswalker into doubling season and then just go off from there and win the game, or lock everybody out of the game, or do something like that, then I have an issue with it. Because that's like a house rule, and the rules committee has even explicitly said the Planeswalker as commander rule is a house rule, in a sense, that it's written the rules for tournament play. You cannot go to a tournament and play like Narset Parter of Veils, the new mono blue Narset from War of the Spark. You can't build a mono blue Narset deck and go to a GP, or I'm sorry, a Magic Fest, and play it in a commander event. But there's nothing stopping me from doing that if I'm just sitting down at the kitchen table with my friends. Like, I'm for that. I'm for that particular line of thought where if my playgroup's okay with it, then I'm okay with it. Or if they're not okay with it, then I guess, I have to suck it up. I guess I can't do that. Whatever.
Yeah, and it does kind of depend on your play group, but I think for Commander as a whole, I just think that it's not necessarily too powerful. I just think it changes the format too much. Because that's kind of my main thing with it. It's not necessarily that everybody's just going to start running around with Raw Storm Conduit and Reverberate and or anything of that twin cast stuff like that. It's not that I think that people are just going to be running around doing that, but I think that having that even as an option is just changes the format so much that I just don't think we should do it in the first place. Because then we're gonna have a whole new round of bans, and it's just kind of muck things up for Commander players.
Well, I agree with you on the whole, and like to kind of close out like that whole segment. I agree with you that as a official rule for the commander format for tournament purposes, planeswalkers should not legally be allowed to be your commander. So instead, let's focus on one planeswalker in particular that was just printed in War of the Spark that has generated a lot of controversy over sideboards in Commander. And of course, we're looking at Karn the Great Creator.
Yeah, this card, I really like him. He's 4. His static ability is activated ability. Artifacts your opponent's control can't be activated. His +1 until your next turn. Up to 1 target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness, each equal to its converted mana cost. And his -2, which is the one we're kind of most interested in here, being you may choose an artifact card you own from outside the game or in exile, reveal that card and put it into your hand. It comes in with 5 loyalty. So,
well, this raises the question of, should we allow sideboards / wish boards in Commander? Of course, the term wish board coming from like Glittering Wish, I think, is one of them. It's like a green-white card that lets you get a card from outside the game, or Coax from the Blind Eternities that lets you go get an Eldrazi from outside the game. And there's another Eldrazi from like Rise of the Eldrazi that like it has a 20 mana activated ability or something ridiculous like that. Spawn Sire of Ulamog, I think that's what it's called. Lets you go get an Eldrazi from outside the game. Of course, we're talking about those cards in relation to should the format allow that type of outside card pool.
Yeah, because the way that it's printed at the moment, like the way the rules are stated, is you can't really do that. You really can only search for cards.
Well, it doesn't do anything. The way it is like if I play Karn the Great Creator -2, well, I'd like to go find an artifact from outside the game.
Yeah, the only thing that it can search for is stuff in exile, which is stated. But wish cards, like Glittering Wish, Mastermind's Acquisition, I don't think that they can search for stuff in exile. So
no, I don't think so. I think it's just like outside the game. I think Karn, right, like in that like specific 2 words, outside the game or in exile, 2-3 words. I think like on a little side note, it changes like the playability in Commander, because yes, I can't technically go outside the game to find it, but if someone exiled one of my artifacts or something, cool, I get it back.
Yeah, and that's the thing that makes him a little bit better, at the moment. And honestly, I'm all for it. I think that wish cards, they aren't super busted. Obviously, there needs to be some rules put in place, like the sideboard should be singleton, just like our format.
But how many cards should it be? That's the question.
I think 15 is reasonable. Honestly, I know that we're in a 100 card format, but honestly, if you're hitting wish abilities more than 15 times, just switch some of your wish cards with the cards in the sideboard that are in your sideboard and or board, if you will,
Well,
because
I already keep sideboards for some of my decks, and I only mean that in the sense that I like to play test whether, like, when new cards come out, if I feel like it fits into one of my decks, one of my like 15 decks, I'm like, oh, that would be good in this deck. I'll go through the deck and I'll look for. I'm like, oh, well, I can probably take this out for it and try it and see if it'll work, see how it plays, see what it does, and if I don't like it, I'll discard it or whatever. But I keep, I keep like a thing of, anywhere from like 5 to 10 cards, depending. It depends on how many cards from the new set that came out are playable in that deck. But like
yeah, and
I do keep sideboards, but they're not necessarily for the purpose of going outside the game to find the card and bring it into the game.
right, and you know, I think a lot of people do that. I do that. I'll get a card and I'll be like, this card I think will go really well in my Melik deck, and I'll just I'll throw it in there, switch it out for something, and see if it works. If it doesn't work, I just switch them back, and then my sideboard, if you will, is just doesn't exist anymore. But I think for the sake of wish cards, I think 15 is fine. You're
See,
really
that's where I
not.
disagree. I disagree with you in 15. I think it should be anywhere from 5 to 10. And I only say that because 15 is a lot. Because if did you say that, like, if we did have sideboards that you would adhere to the singleton rule?
Yes.
See, now that's the thing, is that's 15 individual cards that I now have to keep track of for that deck. So,
I mean, it's a maximum of 15. You don't have to fill all.
yes, but the thing is if you don't fill up the maximum of 15, you're basically doing your deck a disservice.
True.
I think it should be anywhere from 5 to 10. Like, I think that's fair, adhering to the singleton rule, and that's if we were to do it, because I'm not so sure that sideboards in Commander are a good thing. And I only say that because it's really like weird. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like breakable in the sense that, well, I don't really have to have, like, well, here's a perfect example. Karn Mycosynth Lattice. I don't, if I'm playing Karn in my artifact deck, and my plan is to Karn Mycosynth Lattice lock you out of the game, so you can't tap any of your lands, you can't do anything, then I don't have to then put Mycosynth Lattice into my deck. I only have to put Karn into my deck, and then if Karn resolves, okay, cool, -2, I'm going to go get Mycosynth Lattice right into my hand, and then I might have something on the battlefield that's like, oh, cool, just cheat this into play, and then it's like, I think that sideboards in Commander, it's almost like it's against the spirit of the format.
I mean, the same could kind of be said for like Kuldrotha Forge Master. I just have to play Kuldrotha Forge Master, and then he may or may not have haste, but once I can, I just tap him, sacrifice 3 artifacts, and I can go get whatever I want.
But that's in your
my
deck, though. That's
Yeah.
in your deck. That's something that you have to factor into the
But the thing
process
is,
of deck building.
right. But what I'm saying is, if you're saying this on the basis of, they're not going to have to worry about putting Mycosynth in their deck. Well, even if they did, they're a lot of times with combos like that, people don't draw both of the things. They go and they search for one of them somehow or another, whether it be like a might or a mastermind's acquisition, Kuldrotha Forge Master, whatever way you search for your stuff. And any of your tutors, vampiric tutor, demonic
Your
tutor,
basic
what
black
have you.
tutors, or
Yeah,
like
your
even
basic black
like
tutor.
fabricate, like go search for an artifact, whatever.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So when you do something like that, you know, like people do that all the time, and I honestly don't think having it in the sideboard changes anything. I actually think it's almost better because now they cannot draw Mycos and Blattis.
But
They can't.
it also, in the sense that you can't touch the sideboard at all. Like, there's no way to like, you have whatever card that they're using to go get something out of the sideboard, you have to answer it right then and there if you don't want them to go get whatever it is out of the sideboard. And also, the and when I say like against the spirit of Commander, I mean in the, like, the most practical sense that, okay, if I'm playing a black white deck, um and I know that I'm playing in an artifact heavy meta. Like, my friends like to run a bunch of artifacts. Well, black can't touch artifacts, so then white has to. And then I also know that some of my friends are really into the graveyard strategy, so then I'm going to need to run some graveyard hate cards. So then what you're then incentivized to do would to be then play a wish card of some kind. That way you don't have to put those graveyard hosers or those artifact hosers into your deck and waste slots in your deck on those cards. So, for example, let's say we're going to play Rest in Peace to hate on the graveyards and Stony Silence to hate on the artifact decks. Normally, I would have to give up 2 slots in my deck to just to play those cards and use them as silver bullets against both of, like, if I'm sitting down at the table with my friend who likes to play artifacts, my friend who likes to play with the graveyard. I then have to use 2 slots in my deck to shore up against those matchups, and it's gonna make your deck a lot worse, because the more silver bullets you try to include in your deck, it's the worse it's gonna make the synergy of your deck. Unless for some odd in that case, both of those are enchantments. If you're playing like an enchantress type deck and you care about enchantments, then cool. But that's not always the case, and very rarely will that be the case that, oh cool, this just so happens to, work out all peachy keen or whatever. Like, this just so happens to work out insane in my favor. Like, I don't think that you should be allowed to have a card that lets you go outside of the game to get another card that then would allow you to hate on that deck. You should have to factor that into your deck building.
Yeah, and it also, it does kind of depend a little bit, like, on your playgroup. Because if you're really needing to have slots where you're like, man, if I don't hose this player, I'm gonna lose. Maybe you kind of need to look at the power dynamic a little bit. Because if I have to sit there while building my deck and say, man, I have to put in a bunch of artifact hate to make sure that the artifact player, in my playgroup doesn't run rampant, then you do, you kind of have to ask yourself, is the power dynamic in a good spot in your playgroup? And what I mean by that is, is somebody in your playgroup playing a deck that's maybe a little too powerful for everybody else? Maybe they've got like a tier 1 like competitive deck, and you're playing a budget Cranko deck where maybe you're pumping out a couple of goblins a turn, but it's nothing compared to what your tier 1 guy is doing.
But that's the point, though, is like, if someone is doing that powerful stuff, that should be the response of the group, instead of like, and like, here's a good example. Instead of the playgroup calling, like, if you had your own ban list, your playgroup says, screw it, we're done with the rules committee, that Paradox Engine ban was stupid, we're gonna make our own ban list, we're gonna ban our own things, and we're gonna adhere to our own rules because we're rebels. If someone comes in with that tier 1 deck and then the playgroup says, well, instead of adjusting to the meta, we're just gonna say, oh, that card that lets you go off, say it's like a Doomsday deck, okay, Doomsday is now banned. Or it's like a Kess deck and they need Kess to go off, okay, Kess is now banned, or something along that line. Instead of changing your deck to suit the meta, which is how it should be, you're just going to call for a ban and try to get the easy way out. Now, granted, there are situations where that's applicable, like where that person refuses to play anything different and is just like they're just gonna be they're just gonna be a bully about it. They're not gonna play nice or whatever it is. They're not gonna build a new deck. They're not gonna do this. They're not gonna do that. Okay, cool. Whatever it is, then that's a issue for the play group to address. But if it's solely predicated on like, okay, their deck like goes off on turn 6 using their graveyard, the correct response from you should then be, okay, I need to play some more graveyard hate cards. Or if they're relying on a certain type of permanent, say it's a creature, say like a Marin deck. Okay, I need to play more pinpoint removal, so as soon as I see Marin, she's dead. Cool. I'm gonna try to keep that player down for as long as I can. Or even in the same case of a Marin deck, using one of your land slots to just put in a Bojuka Bog to just exile their graveyard. It's simple things like that's how commanders should be. You should be actively looking at the cards in your deck and saying, are these cards suitable to like hang in my meta? So like
Yeah.
if someone's playing a lot of counter spells, well then like however you would get around counter spells, I don't really know how you get around counter spells other than trying to be as aggressive as possible and stick threats early down early in the game and then just going after them.
I just, I think that, with the whole wishboard thing, I think it's not necessarily as broken as you kind of make it out to be, especially if it's restricted to, like somewhere between 5 to 10 cards. But I also think, if you adhere to the singleton rule, that they're gonna find a way to balance it out to where it's not stupid powerful, where anybody who's making use of those extra cards are winning every game, but you also gotta be sure that that people who are using making use of their wish boards get a little bit of value out of it.
Yeah,
To
and
where
like maybe the answer to this whole like all of these problems that we've addressed, the bans, planeswalkers as commanders, and sideboards, are to do the thing that they did with unstable. Cool, unstable cards are now legal for the next month. Like, what if they said, okay, X, Y, and Z cards are off the ban list for the next month and a half, and then they had some way to then monitor that data. Then they would be able to make informed decisions on whether or not those cards rightfully belong on the ban list, or planeswalkers are legal for the next month and a half in Commander, without the can be your Commander text, and some way to monitor the data and see just how problematic like the doubling season problem is, or what like the I don't really think the Raul Zarek one is all that big of a deal, but if it were if I might be wrong, and it might turn out to be the most broken thing that comes out of that. And then sideboards are legal for the next month and a half in Commander. It's a thing. All your wish cards now work, just to see how it goes.
Yeah, and I do think that's a good idea. Where we just kind of test the waters a little bit and see how it goes. But who's really to say? We'll find out here in the next couple of months of kind of how the rules are going to change, and if we're going to get that sideboard, or I don't think we'll get planeswalkers as commanders, but if that happens, they'll announce that eventually. But I think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you everybody so much for joining us. It's been great, and if you have any questions, comments, just leave it down in the comments below. Let us know what you think, and if you have anything that you want us to address on our next In the Stack episode, just let us know, and we'll see you guys next time.
See you guys.